CESS? CESS, right. CESS network. Use of blockchain to enhance data security, privacy, and access. He'll discuss CESS's focus on scalability, decentralized storage solutions with advanced cryptographic protocols, including the proof of data reduplication? Reduplication. Oh yes, that is. Reduplication and recovery. And Proxy Re-encryption Technology, which ensures data integrity and ownership. Lee envisions that these innovations as foundational for secure data in Web3. Mr. Lee. Jordan?
Yes, that is correct.
There you go. Just hit that. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to thank GPA for the opportunity for CESS Network to be here, to be able to share CESS with you and talk to you about DePIN and in this digital world that we live in today. So let's start with the role of DePIN decentralized platform. CESS is a complete data infrastructure that encompasses blockchain technology, and on top of that, we have CESS protocols. We're keeping the data private, and we are keeping the data sovereign. We want to bring the data ownership back to the owner of the original data, so we could further bring back the data value to them. Now, sorry, but I'm not too good with this right now. Sorry about that. Now we have several layers in our protocol stack. We are based on the blockchain technology, and we have the CESS blockchain at the bottom. And we're building from the blockchain layer, going up to the decentralized storage layer, where the storage happens with the storage miner, and we have consensus miner running along the layer. And on top of that, we have a content delivery layer, where that delivers real-time video without jitter. And that is quite an achievement from CESS's network. On top of that, we have an interface where you interact to program and interact with UI. Furthermore, we have something new. We call it AI Link. Now, I don't think anybody heard of AI lately, have they? No. So what our protocol, what they do, is to help to build training models, sharing training models as an aggregator. But at the same time, we keep the data private. So you don't share the data. You only share the model that you train. And we keep them separate. So we always have the data protected for the owners. At the same time, in our protocols, we could also use the compute model to help to train the model, to speed up the training. So this is a big highlight of our infrastructure. Let's take a look at what's happening in the past. Since web version 1, Yahoo and MSN, they were a big deal, weren't they, back then? We love it. We could view news from the world. But as we go into the Web 2, we got more. We could interact with the web. Awesome. We could put data into the web. Great. But what does that mean to you? Where's your data going? How is your data being handled? Have all those questions been answered? Well, yes and no. Your data is in the internet. Who owns it? You think you do, but not exactly. Because you're going to see your data floating somewhere, somehow. Has anybody seen emails from your institution, credit card company, you know, that your data may be lost or exposed? So we are facing with data security. As we go into Web3, that's the new frontier. We are at the beginning of Web3. I want to remind everyone, Web2 is not going away. But we want to work with Web2, but at the same time, we are looking at what's going forward, what's ahead of us. Web3. Web3, you could read, you could write, and you could own your data. And how is that going to happen? Let's take a look at the DePIN model. What does DePIN do? DePIN is Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Network. So that is the baseline of any DePIN project as the infrastructure, including CESS. CESS, we deploy DePIN model. So DePIN is the infrastructure. The protocol is called the blockchain that's driving the infrastructure, and CESS builds on top of that. So what we do as an advantage of using DePIN as advantages, we provide the security, privacy, and where we keep the data private. So as soon as the data come onto our chain, we will make a couple, 3 copies, a few copies, and we will shard them, and we will encrypt them before we even distribute out to our nodes on the DePIN infrastructure. So that way, in the case of any region that could be, I hate to say it, a natural disaster or some kind of disaster, that we lose that part of the data. But no worry, the chain knows exactly where to get the data back and build the data back to you. So there's no worry about that. The high availability, redundancy is built within the chain. So that we're going to always keep your data available. That is resiliency, reliability, all built within transparency and trust. You could track all the transactions on our chain through our Explorer. So this, when you see each hop where your data is going, you could track and you could trace. From that point on, you know where your data going, from where to where. It's 100% visible. Now, by doing all this, we want to empower users for the data ownership. What does that really mean, data ownership? I mean, we heard a lot about data ownership, sovereignty, right? So let's just put an example here. You surf the web, you do a Google search, say about cars, and then next thing you know, you get ads on different cars. Think about that. Do you own your data? I'm sorry, say no. So within our chain, on our infrastructure, your data is protected. You authorize who can see your data, who could use your data by giving them a key. We use public keys. But the data in transit, at rest, all protected in fragments, encrypted on our network. Here are some of the examples on the DePIN model. It is based on blockchain, and then we have different modules running. You have the infrastructure module running, you have the wallet, it is cross-chain compatible, and then you have a physical network. So what type of network? You could provide bandwidth, you could provide storage, you could provide compute, GPU, and more. Now, what kind of servers can you be used? It can be wireless, geospatial, mobility. There's many more. But they are all based on DePIN with IoT devices and many others. And there are so many great DePIN projects out there based on the DePIN model, and we could not all fit on one page. Well, we tried. I lied. So as you can see, CESS is under the storage network. Our primary mission is to provide the total data infrastructure solution, specifically focused on the enterprise level, where they demand high availability, scalability, security, performance, and so and so. But we're not limited to enterprise only. We are provided to public, private, government, anybody who can use it, because we keep your data safe. And you can see the other service providers that provide compute network and bandwidth network, and this is all based on blockchain. This is the meat of CESS, the center of CESS. If you take a look at the bottom layer, I don't know if you could see it. Sorry, can I move the chair? Just move the chair. How's that? Okay, thank you. Bottom layer, CESS blockchain. Now, this is where our protocol happens. We have the consensus validator selection there. We have the smart contract that runs natively on our chain, not a plugin module, native. And then this is our data ownership happening, running MDRC. I'll talk a little bit about that later. And consensus, we are keeping your data safe by running this protocol. We make sure your data is always available. And then we have the encryption system. SESScan is our explorer. That's where you can see where's your data going. And then EVM machine, we are cross-chain compatible. On top of that, we have the distributed storage layer. And this layer is where our miners and consensus miners located at. They interact with each other, constantly checking with each other, talking with each other. We want to make sure our miner is always there to provide the resources they say they will provide. And on top of that, we have the distributed content layer. This is very good layer. You know why I say that? Because we have a project called Telewelly. And everybody heard about YouTube, TikTok, right? Look at this Telewelly as a decentralized TikTok or Yahoo. YouTube. So we could play back the video in real time without flickers or jitters on a decentralized network. We are very proud to say we are achieving the processing time in milliseconds. So that's how we achieve that. And we're able to perform the throughput on our chain of 10,000 transactions per second. That's our performance. On top of that, we have the interface layer. We're being very flexible. You could build the apps on there using API, SDK, RPC, CLI. We are very compatible. And the very newest thing that we're offering is to the right. You can see the AI protocol suite. The main thing under the AI protocol suite is right now is CESS AI Link, but there'll be more later. What does CESS AI Link do? Look at this as an aggregator to help to train the models, to help train other models, bring those models together and produce a different model. At the same time, we will protect your data, though not to reveal them. to keep it to yourself, because there are regulations out there won't let you do that. Think about HIPAA. Did I strike a nerve? I guess I did. But we want to protect your data regardless regulation, because we believe the data is yours, not anybody else to manipulate with. It's a very funny thing I talk about compliance and regulation. We have different compliance and regulation at the local level, state level, federal level. So we want to really look at those regulations. And I think throughout the day, I've learned a lot from different agencies and really gotten some good information. This is a great conference. We have this called location-based storage selection. What does that mean? That means you put your data on our network. You could select where you want your keep your data at certain region. That would comply with the regulation, at least, that keep your data within specific place. We have that location-based storage selection. We empower responsible AI with privacy. As I said before, we keep your data private. People cannot see it. Say if somebody just get into, say, 2, 3, 5, 10 miners, hack their machine, got the data, they're not going to be able to rebuild the data from the fragments, even if they crack the code, because they are fragments. Only our system know how to put the data back as a whole. You could try, hack, no problem. We encourage you. Millisecond retrieval. I have mentioned that before. Our performance is in milliseconds. Take a look at our webpage. Tally-wally, video playback, real time, no jitter, no flicker. Take a look. We have disaster recovery. We put our data out to the miners. We know how to put it back. Only we know how. You cannot hack into a miner node and put data back. There's no way. User privacy authorization. Yes, we do that. And we only authorize you say who you are. We verify the keys with you to make sure you are who you are. And very last thing is very exciting for us. We have applied to the IEEE of the Decentralized Storage Protocol Standard. We've been accepted. We have our first meeting already. We are working on the standard itself right now. We are very excited to put out this standard once it's approved, and everybody could take a look at our protocol stack, and maybe we have a standard, just like IPv4 protocol standard. Everybody's following IPv4, right? And when IPv6 come out, everybody's following that. You could do your own thing, but you're only going to talk to yourself. That's what we want to do. Here are some of the use cases I have mentioned before. Data availability is very important for us because we want to make sure your data is always available to use. That's why we have our protocol to reduplicate the data and keep them secure and private for you. And then the front-end support, we have the UI interface for you to build programs. Real-world assets, for us, is the storage and the content delivery. For other DPIN project, could be wireless, geospatial, and others. There's many more. We want to make sure, as a platform, as a decentralized data infrastructure, that we could cater to users' need. Because if we cannot cater to users' need, we won't be able to provide the service for you. We want to make sure users, they have what they're looking for. First, how to protect their data, how to keep their data private, how to bring the data value back to them. We are working on that constantly because we believe data evolves around us every day. So just for instance, how many people is in the audience today? I didn't count, so did somebody count? That's data, right? So everything we do is data. How many cup of coffee have you drank? Data. So we deal with data every day. We want to make sure data is there for you, but protected. Not out to the open for other company to use as a marketing tool. So this is CESS. And I have mentioned that already. CESS is here, and I wish everybody have a chance to go to CESS.network, have a look at us. Our white paper technology is all on our website. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry, I got
No. Could we get some help up here to put these back? And while we're doing that, I really was remiss in saying that we wanted to thank CESS Blockchain as a sponsor for this conference. It's their commitment to advancing decentralized, secure, and scalable data solutions, which embodies the innovation and progress that we all celebrate today. CESS's leadership in decentralized storage technology is shaping the future of infrastructure and empowering industries globally. Thank you, CESS, for your invaluable support and partnership in making this event possible. Just as a small comment about tonight's event, and that is that if you can, don't worry about your opportunities to speak with the speakers. They should be at the event tonight, so there'll be plenty of time for you then to engage with them and learn more about what they can do. But with that, we now have a panel here, and this is going to continue on this discussion of decentralized platform storage and computing. Mr. Lee, would you introduce your people?
Okay, we have our panel. Let's start with Kyle. Come on up, Kyle. And we have Ian. Come on up, Ian. We have Steve. Come on up, Steve. Let's do the lottery. Can everybody hear me? I hope you don't get tired of hearing me. So now, after that long speech, I get to have a break. They get to talk. So we want to shift our focus to a panel discussion. And I'd like to do a quick round of introduction. Let's start with you, Kyle. Let's do a quick introduction of yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. Kyle Langham. I work for the DFINITY Foundation. The DFINITY Foundation is a major contributor to the Internet Computer Protocol, which is easiest way to understand it is AWS, but without the A. Our vision is for all software to run on a blockchain, so that's front-end, back-end data. And so that's, if you're early in the Ethereum days, the vision comes out of the idea of a world computer. So, yeah, thank you.
Ian?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ian Taylor, founder and CEO of SIMBA Chain. We started SIMBA Chain back in 2016. I was a professor at Notre Dame, and it kind of led me astray, I guess. Since then, we built a platform to make it easier to use blockchain application, build blockchain applications, and then we're also more recently created this kind of decentralized permissioning layer for data, which we're using in the DoD, specifically the Air Force.
Steve?
Great. Hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Henley. I'm the Director of Business Development at PermaLabs. And PermaLabs, you can think of it as a layer 2 blockchain-based company. A middleware, we're built on top of a layer 1, but our core value add is the ability to store large data files on-chain. And there's numerous types of application. We're focused on supply chain, but we want to make storing large data files on-chain as easy as drag and drop. Just take your file and drop it into your PermaDrive. So that's PermaLabs. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for your great introductions. Let's get into our questions. I'm sorry to say it's a multi-part questions. So the first one. So governments around the world are starting to show more interest in blockchain and decentralized technologies. What role do you see government play in fostering regulating decentralized platform and data storage? What policy could best support innovation without stifling it? And how might zero trust framework factor into a regulatory environment for decentralized data storage? That's a long question. Sorry, guys. How about you, Kyle? Let's start with you.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll just tackle a little bit of it to leave some more meat for my fellow panelists. I have enough gray hair to remember getting online through AOL, if you remember that, with the dial-up. And if you think back to where we were back then and where we're at today, government did play a large role in that, right? So you had this innovative technology come to market, and when you think about the development of broadband and the spread of that throughout the United States, when you think about the communication acts that were passed in order to facilitate social media, all of that, you can think about when Uber launched, the government had to address the idea of a gig economy and whether, and the impact on that on employee relations and things like that. So you see government constantly taking steps in terms of facilitating that innovation, allowing it to happen, but then also setting up the guardrails. I think of blockchain as essentially an extension of the internet. The next wave of innovation, we can go into kind of what blockchain brings to innovation, but essentially, in my mind, when you talk about regulation within blockchain, it really is that same mindset of how do we facilitate innovative products and then create guardrails for consumers. I think we've gotten in a bad habit as an industry of thinking of regulation in the context of, is this thing a security or is it not? That's a very small component of what the government's role should be in blockchain. And so hopefully as we start thinking through like the idea of a DAO and creating legal frameworks around that, as well as the different market verticals that are going to launch, we'll see government walking side with us.
That's a great response. I think government is always with us, whether you know it or not, or how much involvement they are in with us, whether you know or not. So thank you. How about Ian?
Sure. A lot to unpack. So I think about this in terms of a supply chain perspective. So with that in mind, regulation kind of stifles on the one hand because if you try and do stuff across country borders, it becomes very difficult because the regulations are typically designed for centralized systems. But the good news, potentially, is we've been working quite a bit with this new initiative out of EU called the Digital Product Passport. And that regulation is really interesting because it's kind of driving transparency, supply chain transparency, right down to the kind of subparts and to the raw materials that make up the product. And what that does for consumers, it puts the power in the consumer's hands because they can choose to buy ethical products, or they can choose to promote sustainability, or they can choose not to, but they will have that information available to them. In terms of kind of what that does for DePIN, I mean, now, when you open up those supply chains, you've got access to data that you've never had before. So companies benefit from that perspective to bring about efficiency and things like that. But it provides all of these nodes that suddenly light up and form this kind of network of supply chain data. And I think that is kind of ripe for DePIN technology to take that data and provide an infrastructure to bring that data together and provide that transparency. And in terms of zero trust, I think zero trust is the way to go because, in a zero trust model, nobody gets access to anything until permissions are given, rather than the other way around. So I think that building up those kind of credentials in that way is important.
And this is why blockchain is exciting. We always learn something new. Steve?
Yes, so to answer the first part of the question regarding the fostering of blockchain, I think of what our keynote speaker said, Liz Tanner, where 2 points that I took away was creating well-defined use cases. And because government, we don't want to create things that government doesn't need. So creating well-defined use cases and identifying what those metrics are, the metrics, the KPIs, and that will lead to success. And the second point she had mentioned was education. So as government officials and legislators get that education, it's going to be easier for those of us in commercial private industry to talk to them, not over their heads, so that something that they can relate to. And then as far as policy goes, I think government is risk averse. They don't want to get out there and be the innovators. They're very cautious, which is, they're responsible for being diligent with taxpayers' money, which is appropriate. So we're from the GBA standpoint, we're trying to get the blockchain maturity model, the BMM, introduced into legislation and to requests for proposals on the part of governments. So the BMM will help to kind of reduce that risk. It's creating that framework so it's less about the hype, more about the value. And so with the BMM in government requests for proposals, that would be a big win for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And that really sounds wonderful. And government's involvement. Just like our CESS's recent trip to Capitol Hill, we get a chance to talk to the Senate about blockchain. And I, at first, was kind of surprised. Oh, they want to talk to us to learn more about blockchain? Well, you know what? They have the misconception, associate blockchain with crypto only. I'm sorry to say, blockchain is a lot more than crypto. And that's how we get a chance to talk with them, to let them know we go beyond crypto. We have different technologies that we could offer assistance in so many different ways. So we're happy that we get a chance to talk with them. Okay, next question. There's often a tension between decentralization and centralized control, especially when it comes to governance and enforcement. So the question is, how do you think decentralized platform can maintain a balance between independence and complying with local international laws or regulations?
Joseph, I'm laughing over your comment about using the term blockchain instead of crypto, because when Liz was up here talking about how she tries to avoid the word blockchain because it has a negative connotation to some people, I try to avoid crypto and use blockchain instead because of the extreme negative connotation you get with crypto. The root word of crypto is cryptography, and I think it's important as an industry we recognize that that is like our foundation. Going back to the question in terms of governance, I'll just speak from my own experience. The Internet Computer was created by the DFINITY Foundation. We worked on it for 5 years, and then when we went into mainnet, we put it under control of a DAO. Anyone can join the DAO by taking the governance steps to do so that membership of the DAO changes over time. And at that point, then it's our baby. We've kind of launched it into the world, and we no longer have control. So even code updates require the DAO. The DAO has to approve all code updates, adding any nodes, like pretty much anything at the hardware or software level is in the DAO's control. And so we have no longer control over whether or not it adheres to local or international regulations. However, the DAO has made some interesting choices, like the node providers have to be KYC'd, so know your customer. So you know the government, everyone knows the individual person running every single node. So at that point, then they have an incentive to adhere to the local regulations. The DAO has decided that it's going to enforce copyright laws, and copyright standards. And it's interesting just watching like the forums of the various DAO members as they like debate these different things as they come up. And it's clear that, at least in a decentralized organization, the DAO is very focused on the long term, recognizing that, hey, if you're going around with like a degenerate or a anarchist mindset of we don't want the government anywhere involved in this, regulations are bad, that's going to really stifle adoption. It's going to stifle the long-term vision of the internet computer. And so the DAO itself has decided to put in these safeguards and incentives to adhere to local regulations.
That's great, because I think governance on the blockchain is very important, and the DAO community is definitely a critical point to have at every blockchain project. So, Ian?
Yeah, so I mean, going back to what I said earlier, this EU digital product passport as an example, that's kind of interesting because it kind of breaks out this model a little bit and really kind of meeting those guidelines and achieving the technology is a balance, right? So the way we've been thinking about that is to use kind of a lightweight kind of overlay to connect the data together. And the way we do that is we're using decentralized identifiers, which identify people or entities, like supply chain companies in this case, and they can be used to identify data. And then we have these verifiable credentials that people can issue to give access to that data. So supply chain company 1 could put some data out there. It's self-sovereign to them, so they're not releasing that data, but they could then choose to issue a credential to another company or to the EU or whatever, and that would form the basis of being able to provide that data to that other entity. So they're in their own, their data's in their own control, and they give access to who they want. Now that model works in a couple of different ways. In one level, it kind of everything's represented kind of like a DPIN layer, but you don't have to have the tokenization because there's EU guidelines that say you have to do it. So that removes that necessity, but we kind of model things around an NFT. So every data that's shared is modeled as an NFT, and that NFT has a content-based hash of the data, so it uniquely represents that data and no other data. So that's one side of it, and that NFT acts as the verifier in the system to gain access to the data. But then you can also use that NFT, because it does uniquely represent that data, that can be issued a DID2. And the way you can use that is you can have somebody go in to look at the data, verify the data is ethical or sustainable, issue a credential against that data to say so, which is verified by a third party. And those credentials could be viewed in a public way. So you could have public verifiability and private data.
So it's more than like a conventional MFA? Multi-factor authentication?
Yeah, I mean, these are digitally signed documents, right, that only you can use.
Okay.
So you have to have the private key to prove that you are that identity.
That's very interesting approach, and it's secure. Okay, Steve?
Yeah, thank you. So when I think about this question regarding blockchain and local government, state and local, I think about voting. So voting is a use case where, for instance, I'm from the state of Florida. So one of the requirements is all of the servers need to be located within the state of Florida. So ideally, in the world of blockchain, you have decentralization. Distribution, they're distributed geographically, around the country, around the world, and decentralized. But in a voting use case, hey, that's not going to happen. There are, reasons why the information needs to stay within the state of Florida. So, it's not, some may say, hey, if these servers and nodes are not truly distributed and decentralized, they're around the world or, throughout the country, it's not a real blockchain. I recognize, hey, there is, that's a legitimate argument, and, there's some challenges there. But the advantage is, I think blockchain is slowly making its way into the domain of voting. So that's a good thing. So, it's a give and take, and step by step, as the technology advances and as legislators and government officials get more comfortable with the technology, we will progress in that way. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. So we got 30 minutes left. I want to leave some room for Q&A from the audience. So I'm going to ask you one last question. So let's shift gears to innovation. Decentralized computing has been significant advancement recently. What are the latest innovation in decentralized platform in your opinion? And how could we push them forward, in your opinion? Thank you.
I will say, so I like to laugh because when my parents get asked, like, what does your son do for a living? They always say he does something with Bitcoin, which, and it kind of touches on that, like, blockchain still hasn't found that use case that actually gets outside in which every single human being interacts with it. Ian, I think verifiable credentials is actually that use case that most people will actually interact with the blockchain and not know it, and it'll be that privacy preserving, you reveal a fact about yourself without revealing much more information beyond that, which touches on so much. I don't want to, in case that was your answer, I don't want to go too far into that. Sorry.
I'm done, man.
I'll say the other fun thing I like to see is people are exploring doing inference, so AI inference engines. If you think about like ChatGPT, when you're putting in your prompt, you're actually giving a prompt to an inference engine, which is a trained model. People are exploring putting that on blockchain. I know of one developer who's exploring using inference on blockchain to then also be able to sign back Bitcoin transactions or Ethereum transactions. So having AI agents that can transact either with each other or execute, maybe you plan a vacation using an LLM and then you want to just book it all and it'll facilitate the crypto transaction for you to book it all. Those kind of things. The idea of like a DAO owning an AI agent or an AI agent acting on behalf of a DAO. So these are like the cool, maybe this is more futuristic, but they're developers who are legitimately working on these things today. And it's not a matter of the technology. The technology is actually there. It's a matter of basically playing around with it, finding that product market fit to where it actually has, buyers who are willing to pay for the service. So
this remind me of something. Jack Huang from NVIDIA said once in his speaking event, they are using AI to program their AI. Think about it. That's a really smart move. Ian?
Okay, I need to follow that. So, I thought the demo earlier was really good. When you demonstrated, that centralization doesn't work because people couldn't see your slides through the arrangements of these chairs. So that was pretty cool. So decentralized technologies, right? So I will go with the kind of use case that I've been running with. I think the decoupling, especially the decoupling of wallets that are used to access blockchain typically, and we know that we can use DIDs and credentials to access account abstraction and decouple that process completely, plus make it more user-friendly. I think that is one use case of the use of DIDs and credentials, but there's so many more, notwithstanding the fact of their original purpose, which was self-sovereignty, but they can be used for data and all of these, real decentralized applications surrounding a blockchain. And if that can be integrated with the blockchain, I think you get the best of the both worlds there.
Okay, great. Steve, make it quick. We want to leave time for the audience to ask questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So with self-sovereign identity or self-sovereign ID, the user is now responsible for their data. They're in control of that. So, and that gives them the ability for access controls. You know, who do they want to share their data with, who they don't want to share their data with. So with Web3, one of the things that we're working on is with this, it's permissions. So typically everyone's familiar with giving permissions to a user. You know, this person has access to this data, or I'm taking access away. But now we can give permission to the data. Now the data is the governance. Now the data in a smart contract has the requirements as far as who can get access and how long they can have access, and then when the access is denied. And then also more robust is giving permissions to groups. So and if someone is added to the group, they automatically get those permissions to the data. So these are some of the innovations happening in permissioning.
Thank you, Steve. So now we leave it to the audience. Do we have any questions for the panelists?
Hi, thank you. My name is Joan. I'm with Mergo Academy. It's an education blockchain group. I had a question about the DAOs. Right now, I understand that maybe Wyoming is the only place you can legally register a DAO. How do you hold a DAO accountable legally? Like if I wanted to sue your DAO, how would that take place?
Please don't sue my DAO. I mean, those are the questions. I know, so I typically interact with developers and entrepreneurs, and they don't necessarily worry about how somebody can sue the DAO that they want to create. They actually more think through, like, how do I enter into a legal agreement with, let's say, a vendor that's going to provide a service to the DAO, or how do I pay a developer to develop some software on behalf of the DAO. Yeah, those are, I know, like Wyoming has created a legal structure to actually create contracts. But that's a great question, and that's exactly the kind of things that we need to think through. I mean, I don't think people realize that, you know, if you go back like 300 years when the joint venture was created, it was like this whole new way of organizing people and resources for a common goal that had never existed before. And now that's given us like corporations and 300 years of management thing. And all of that's being flipped on its head with this whole, with the idea of a DAO, right? You have now bottom-up management style, and we don't have anywhere even to comprehend the impact that that's gonna have on, you know, companies and society as a whole. But that's exactly it. Is like, what is a lawsuit against a DAO? What does that actually even mean? How do you shut it down?
Hi, I have a question. We did work for the blockchain for the enterprise for the last 10 years, applied for many compliant government, especially in Vietnam. But one a lot of questions, but one very important question in my mind come when I heard that blockchain maturity model. That's how about your criteria to talk that is the application for the mature model. That means, for example, I heard for last 10 years, officially come into blockchain, I heard a lot of application, a lot of things talk about blockchain, but not yet real application. How you define that is a real maturity blockchain model?
I think that question's for me, since I brought up the BMM. So thank you for your question. So the blockchain maturity model, it's not going to dictate a specific use case or how to run a particular solution. It's going to ask, you know, as the BMM assessors, they're going to ask the solution, the people in charge of it, hey, have you thought about this? You know, how are you handling that? You know, what about regulations? What about, you've got a particular use case? Tell me more about that. You know, why do you think that is, is this the best way to go about doing what you're doing? It's kind of like asking the questions a fifth grader would ask. You know, the assessment team, they're not the experts with the solution. The solution, they're the experts, but the assessors will ask those probing questions to tease out, to make sure that, hey, that solution has thought through all that they need to think through to make their solution robust as it can be. So that's more of what the benefit of the BMM.
Hi, Jonathan. Hi. So my question's a bit difficult because I've worked on decentralized storage for quite some time. I understand all the ups and downs to it. Probably the most difficult thing to the adoption of decentralized storage and platforms is the cost. Because compared to centralized solutions are very, very cheap in comparison to when you decentralize something, because you're literally multiplying the cost involved in terms of the same thing you're doing. So I'm just curious, I know this is a terrible question, you probably hate it, but I'm curious about what your take is on how you get over the bottom line costs involved, because this is what's really preventing real adoption. Because as soon as a company looks and says decentralized storage versus centralized, they go with centralized because it's magnitudes cheaper than any kind of decentralized storage today. So I'm just curious, how are you going to approach that?
Let me try to take a crack at that one. So we're comparing to, say, AWS S3. I don't know. I don't know the exact cost, but they're not cheap. So as far as CESS, decentralized storage, we have did a calculation analysis. We're about 1/10 cheaper than AWS S3 buckets. Okay, that's my answer. Do panelists have anything to add?
I mean, I think that just the one thing I would add is, cost is one thing, but the value is a different thing. So when I talk to entrepreneurs, I'm always asking, why are you building on a blockchain? If your product doesn't take advantage of either decentralization, cheaper financial rails, digital ownership, or transparency, if it doesn't work one of those core things into the actual value proposition of the product, then you should just build on a Web 2, you should just choose the cheapest option, whether it's Web 2 or Web 3. But if your product requires one of those things, the cost is less meaningful because you can't build the product on a Web 2 tech stack.
And I'd just like to add, when it comes to immutable data that's on-chain that can't be changed, yes, that is possible in a Web 2 environment, but it's expensive. The advantage with Web 3 blockchain is this immutable data, which is going to be, this technology makes it inexpensive. So that's something to consider, is the immutability aspect of the data.
I would add, Steve, even if you say it can't be, there's ways to do it on Web 2. If it's on Amazon servers, it can be changed by Amazon. And if the U.S. government asks it to be changed or taken down, it'll be taken down. So that's the other thing.
Okay, we got 1 minute left.
Yeah, so a quick question. First, a remark. Are you familiar that there is a band out of Detroit in '89 called Insane Clown Posse, nicknamed ICP? So maybe you should get him as your spokesman. The other one is, I think you guys implemented GPT-2 completely on-chain back in August. And ChatGPT and others with a large number of parameters are data hungry, space hungry, and so forth. So I'm interested to know what kind of experience you guys had with that 3 months in.
Yeah, so thank you about the ICP. I'm fully aware of the ban. Essentially, there's two different people that I know of who have implemented a GPT model, a GPT-2. There's a Decide AI, which is a company that built an AI. Actually, they're doing proof of personhood using AI on-chain, but they also have a GPT. And then there's somebody who's just a developer who's just really kind of curious, who's posted in the forums that they got a Llama 3 model at 8 billion parameters. And what I would say is, we're never going to compete. No one's ever going to compete by having your LLM on the Internet Computer or any blockchain really, versus having it on Azure or AWS, just from a performance perspective. So it's going to be more expensive. It's going to be more slow. Again, you have to look at those other advantages you get, as in you can securely sign transactions on another blockchain with an AI agent that is already on a blockchain, or things like that. So the GPT-2 is okay. I still use ChatGPT myself, or actually Gemini and Claude. So yeah, I'm probably, as a consumer, never gonna switch to GPT-2 on the Internet Computer for my everyday questions.
Okay, thank you very much. So as we move in towards Web3, we believe decentralization based on DePIN is the future of the digital economy. So thank you very much. Thank you, the panelists. Thank you very much.
So while they're taking the photograph, I'm just going to talk a little bit about tonight. So again, if you have tickets for this evening, we look forward to you attending. Just so that you know, because I couldn't find it, so I had to have Gerard send it to me. I wanted to know the address of the place. And so this is at the Whitmore House. If you've been at